there's no business that's really self-made, right? It's like there's, you learn insights, tips, tricks, frameworks, ideas, lessons from lots of different businesses, other business owners, other mentors, other masterminds, things like that.
This is Jesse Ray with the Growth House Podcast. I am super excited right now. I got Cody in the studio. We'll talk more about his background, but this is the man behind the scenes of your favorite influencers. You might think like influencers and coaches are magicians. I thought that. These guys are doing the marketing, they're doing the sales, they're also fulfilling everything on the back end. But it's really not sometimes that case. It might look that way, but there's always a guy like Cody behind the scenes. And these are really the guys that make the ship go. These are what we call integrators. These are the people that every visionary needs. And I'm sure Cody would agree on that because some of us paint huge visions. We have no idea actually how to make it happen. So just a background on Cody. This guy's been a hustler, an entrepreneur since 17 years old. And you're still young, man. I think you're like 30. So we can talk about being young and just still, getting after it early on. You've built a real estate and business empire here in Phoenix, Arizona. Mesa, I think, is where you're living now. Current portfolio business exceeds $40 million. Real estate portfolio exceeds $10 million. Collectively, your team has generated over $37 million last year. I could keep going on, but Cody's created Scale with Pros community, which basically shows other business owners how to scale from 7 to 8 figures and using a system that he's used successfully over the past decade. Cody, man, there's a lot of things I could keep going on, but let's just get this started. How are you doing? And welcome to the Growth House Podcast.
Dude, I'm doing great. Happy to be here, and it's always fun. This is my favorite thing to do, is to work on business, talk about business, figure out how to solve business problems. I mean, this is my jam. This is what I wake up every day loving to do. So excited to be here.
I love it. Well, to some people, we're going to nerd out. And that's cool with me because I'm excited to do this. So let's nerd out. But first, before we get started, you mentioned, systems and stuff like that. And that's really what you do and how you help companies. So are there any books that really got you started and really like kind of copied or modeled their operating system? I know EOS is popular, Profit First. Did any of those books or mentors have an impact on how you run businesses today?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, one of the main operating systems that, we do implement into most of the companies is the EOS, the Gino Wickman's book, Traction. I would say that we've taken about 25% of what's in Traction and implemented. And then we've kind of created some of our own proprietary things from things that we've just identified that work well in companies. And, we've just kind of created our own. So we've kind of, I would say that, and I'd say this is true for most businesses, there's no business that's really self-made, right? It's like there's, you learn insights, tips, tricks, frameworks, ideas, lessons from lots of different businesses, other business owners, other mentors, other masterminds, things like that. And you take the things that work, you implement them. The things that don't, you kind of move them to the side. And so, over the years, we've kind of developed our own kind of proprietary system that has elements from multiple different operating systems. But I would say, Traction, Gino Wickman, phenomenal book. I think it's a terrible read for most people because it's so freaking detail oriented. It's just so much stuff. And it's really hard to digest for a lot of people, but it has some really good insight in there for sure. And then as far as, there are in the, you mentioned Profit First, Mike Michalowicz, he has a lot of phenomenal books. He has a book called Clockwork that's really great on building out, operating system, more about like SOPs and how to run your business like clockwork, like the name of the book. And so that was another good baseline, I read a few years ago. But, those are a couple, good starters for sure if you're, trying to work on implementing good systems into a company.
And then how early do you think people should read these type of books? Because, some of our people are solopreneurs. They're like, I don't have a team. Why do I need to worry about core values and when to schedule meetings, etc.? So when would you say is a good time to actually start reading these? Before you have the team and before you, quote unquote, have the culture, or before afterwards?
So my thought process is, well, first off, I want to say, so the stats are out there that, only 3% of businesses in the United States ever achieve $1 million or in revenue or more on an annual basis. And there's a lot of reasons why. And there's certain determining factors that come into play at different revenue ranges for a business. And so when it comes to, reading, traction or, books on systems and those things, those are not super relevant until you're doing a few 100,000 a year in revenue. Like when someone's first starting, like you don't need to go get like your processes like perfectly refined. You need the determining factor from that really 0 to 1 million in revenue is market, sell, market, sell, market, sell. Like yes, you need to fulfill. Yes, you have to pay attention to operations and cash flow. It's just the determining factor that I see time and time again in that 0 to 1 million is, you have to figure out how are you getting enough leads of people that want to buy your stuff. And then how do you convert enough of those leads to actually give you the money for the stuff that you are selling? And do that enough times where you can generate $1 million a year in revenue. But, as you get into the, multiple six figures a year in revenue, you can start taking some time to refine some of your processes. And you really, when I look at just process in general, like you want to start building processes around things that are the most repetitive, that are done the most in the business. So if it's at the beginning, it's sales, you got to refine your sales process so you can get a consistent, predictable sales mechanism occurring in your company so that you're able to get the results that you're looking for on a predictable basis. And that's, market, sell is all the way up to $1 million a year is really the biggest indicator of success that I see, and getting some people to start helping you along the way on that journey. So
Okay, so let's stay right here. What do you think is the biggest roadblock? Because you said it's just market sell, but what do you see
Mhm.
people run into time and time again? Like, oh man, if they just tweak this, that would help so much.
Yeah, so I would say that on the roadblock up to like $1 million a year in revenue. So I would say that people focus their time on so many things that don't really matter. And it's really like if all someone does when they're on their journey to $1 million a year in revenue is focus on how do I get more people to want to buy my stuff, and then actually focus on the skills to sell them your stuff is what's going to be the difference maker. People want to try to learn too many skills in those early stages. And in those early stages, you just need leads, and then you need to sell those leads. And then you need to fulfill on the thing you promised them, which is your operations motion in a business. And so I think that roadblock is, people, I think, overcomplicate things that they're doing. And really, like one of the companies that I bought earlier this year is a cleaning company. It's like it's not a complicated business, but the things that need to be focused on, like as a business just like that's scaling up, is okay. We just need to make sure that the houses are being cleaned and the quality control is good. But other than that, we just need to be filling our pipeline with more opportunities. And I think when people are in those smaller revenue ranges, they're on a hamster wheel. And the hamster wheel works like this. It's essentially they get leads in the door, and then they stop marketing because now they have leads to work. They work those leads, and now they sold some of those leads, and now they have to go and fulfill on the thing they just promised to those leads. And now they service the revenue, and then now they're at this point of they service the thing that they promised, and now they have no new leads. So they go back to the beginning of the hamster wheel, and then they end up on this revenue hamster wheel of where a lot of businesses get stuck in that few $100,000 a year, maybe $500,000 a year. And that's it. They chase the leads, then they chase the selling of those leads, then they fulfill, and then they have to start at zero again. And that's one of the biggest issues is people don't keep that sustaining funnel of that entire process. You have to always be marketing, you have to always be selling, you have to always be fulfilling to continuously grow. And that's where you start having to identify, okay, I need to get some help on my team, because it becomes a lot to always be marketing and always be selling and always be fulfilling at a high level on the thing that you're selling.
Man, why were you describing me, man? You need to relax, Cody. 100%. I totally have felt that, and I think I was there like 6 months ago, and then I was like, oh, I need to start, adding people on the team. So, what would you be step one? Like, who do you add first?
It kind of depends on who you are as an individual. Like you kind of have to, I always look at like what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, and hire the weaknesses of yours on your way to scaling, because they will be able to help you fill those gaps, right? So that's one of the first things is like identifying like who you are as a person, where are your strong suits, and that's you want to kind of backfill around your weaknesses with other people that can help support you. And so let's say for example, for you, probably more visionary, like sales, marketing, right? And so if you're on this path of, and for those out there listening, like you're great at sales and marketing, one of the first hires you're probably going to be looking for is some sort of executive assistant or, high level admin role that can come in and support a lot of these other functions that need to happen in the business. They just don't need to happen by you, and have them kind of support you on this growth journey from that administrative side. And so you can peel back all of the things that you're doing that are not marketing and sales and pass those over to that person that can just, all they do is think about every day, how can I support and take things off Jesse's plate so that Jesse can market more, sell more, so we can grow the company. And so for like me, I'm not a big salesperson. I don't really love sales. I'm very good at sales operations. Like I understand how to set up a sales team from a KPI standpoint. I know what the performance metrics need to be. I know how to put the team together, but I don't get energy from selling, and I don't get energy from managing a sales team. And so one of the first roles, like our Scale with Pros, it's a newer program, and one of the things that we do is some done for you services for companies that qualify, that are doing millions a year already. But one of the things with that offer is, at the beginning stage of this particular company, I will be doing some of the sales motion, not because I want to sell or not because I can't hire someone to do it, but more so because I'm in some discovery of, I want to understand what these conversations look like so that I can make sure our script is refined and our scorecard for when I hire a salesperson is, I know what that conversation looked like. So then I can actually manage them accordingly to that. And I know what the conversations, and I know what those pain points that are up on those phone calls are looking like, so I can coach them better. And so that will be one of the first roles for this particular company that I will be hiring. I have some of our team that supports it already, but from a sales standpoint, that'll be one of my my next hires, because I don't like to do sales, and I like to do all the other stuff.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you believe that you can get to 0 to 6, like annually, 6 figures annually, with just yourself. And then to scale to 6 to 7, that's where you're going to need to bring in some people. How many people would you say is, what you've seen in the past, or what you've currently done?
So that's really hard because it depends on the business, right? Like I have friends that have internet businesses, and they have like 2 VAs and an assistant, and they do $1 million a year. And like that's that's possible. So let's take the residential cleaning company that I bought earlier this year. So they're doing a little over 2 million a year in revenue. So let's just cut it in half, where they're at 1 million a year. They have about 30 cleaners at the 2 million a year mark. So cut it in half. There's about 15 cleaners. So it's like they had 15 cleaners at 1 million, and they had a few other supporting staff, about, I think, like 2 supervisors and an ops manager. So that's, 18 people for $1 million, right? So it's going to depend really on the business, service-based, online, different businesses, right? A CPA firm, which is, I'm looking at those to potentially acquire over the next year. You could have, one CPA service, $250,000 a year in revenue. So you could have 4 CPAs to, manage $1 million a year. So it just depends on the business. And I hate saying it just depends, but it really does on the business itself.
For sure, and it totally makes sense. Let's stay here real quick.
Yeah.
You mentioned buying these, more smaller businesses. And I think Cody Sanchez is someone that's really kind of blown that up. She's out there. What has been the reason that you're like, let me look at these small businesses?
I really enjoy what I do with business, and one of the ways that I want to continue to grow and work with businesses in the future is, and part of like what Scale with Pros is from in general is like, we're coaching people in Scale with Pros, and we're consulting with companies and helping them, and then there's going to be a percentage of those people that maybe they're a fit for me to invest in their company and maybe buy part of their business and then help them at a higher level. But as far as the business buying, I mean, they're essentially flips. Like the cleaning company, we'll probably grow that for maybe 3 years, and then I'll be planning to exit out of that myself. We had bought, this was out of our buy box, but it was just a deal that ended up working out, which is the plant guy, which is out of the realm of usually what I'm involved in, but plant company in Florida. And that's, similar thing, I have a target in mind of, we acquired it about a little over 3 million a year in revenue, which was last year. This year we'll probably hit between 5 to 5.5 million. And, my goal for that is, grow it to about 12 to 15 million a year in revenue. And then I'm going to be making my departure, peacing out. And, the plant guy will be able to continue on. But I'll have made my money along, that way. And I just, have my entry point and when I want to be able to get out of some of these deals. So they're kind of just like short term, a couple year flips essentially of like fixing some things, getting the right things in place, getting the right people in place, the right processes, and then having it be this nice packaged, professionalized company that we can go to a private equity company and, it can get a good payday on, the value creation from that.
So I'm guessing if this company had all the systems and processes in play and was like, man, we really need marketing and sales, you wouldn't probably be like, oh, this is perfect for my buy box. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't again, I can go in and like with Plant Guy, for example, I've had to help them fix their sales process. They weren't they were struggling in a lot of areas there. So from like, okay, how do we need to set up the CRM? How do we make the leads flow through? What are the pipelines that we need to build for the company? Like I could help with all that. What are the roles we need? We need a inside sales rep that's working the leads, setting appointments for our senior designers. Okay, we have a rendering person creating render. It's like I understand how to like put that team together. So I can help companies do that. It's just that's not like that ideal avatar, I guess, when it comes to that business buying side of, is like they are amazing at their marketing and sales, but the rest of their company is a dumpster fire. That's my favorite because it's like those are the things that are like super easy for me to fix and super fun to fix.
I love it. So what is a buy box like for Cody? I mean, you kind of described it a little bit right there.
So right now, I'm not actively acquiring any more companies right now because we just, we're literally 90 days into after we acquired that cleaning company. We're still working on things with Plant Guy, and I'm building the Scale with Pros group right now, and I'm still actively managing a couple of other companies. So I'm not acquiring anything else right now until probably like Q2 of next year. But buy box wise, as far as, as we were buying, was typically up to about 3 million a year in revenue companies. About 1 million to 3 million a year in revenue is what we're looking for companies where the founder wants to stay in place and that we're just buying a chunk of the company. And so with that, and the reason for that is I don't want to go be the face of any of these companies. The only one I want to be the face of is Scale with Pros. That's it. And so like Matthew, the plant guy, he is the guy. Like no one knows Cody at Plant Guy, like besides like the internal team, but like clients don't know Cody. And so my goal is to, go into 1 to 3 million a year companies that have strong marketing and sales, but are struggling with leadership, ops, finance, technology, people, all of those areas of their company, and come in and bring those areas of value to the organization and their in strategic planning and things. So 1 million to 3 million a year, and generating at least 10% net profit is generally what we're looking for. And then the reason I was saying it out of the buy box is Plant Guy didn't really fit in with, we're only really looking for service-based businesses or online based service companies is our actual buy box. So within those revenue ranges where the founder wants to stay in place, I do not want to be the face of any of these companies. So that's essentially what the plan is with the companies to go into, because I could go make a big impact, but I don't have to show up every day and do the things.
No, it totally makes sense. So we talked about going from 6 to 7, and now we're kind of talking about 7 to 8. So what's the number one roadblock that you see when people go from 7 to 8?
Most companies get stuck at 2 to 3 million as far as what I see, because you can brute force your way to $1 million a year. You could even push it up to like maybe 2 or 3. But what has to happen from that 1 or that million to 10 million a year is when you're going into the business, there has to be alignment of the people. The people become the lid at that point. It's the department leadership that has to be installed at that, at those stages so that the business can continue to scale. A lot of times what breaks down is all of the people that were involved in growing the company to 2 to 3 million a year. If they're kind of that 1 to 3, what happens is most of the time people get stuck there because they hired, their cousin and they called them their CFO when really they just barely knew how to use QuickBooks and they're really just a glorified bookkeeper. So they're just a generalist in finance, and they aren't sophisticated enough to actually do the finances for the company of a 3 million a year company. It was fine when they were doing 500 grand a year, but not at 3 million. Same thing with sales. Like if there's a sales manager that was maybe managing at, a few $100,000, $1 million a year. Once you get to 3 million a year, how are you doing your sales forecasts? How are you building your layers of leadership to have, junior salespeople and then senior salespeople? How are you building your model to scale up sales? Like those are things that that's where a lot of businesses cap, because they're not continuing to either invest into their leadership team so that they're able to continue scaling, so they reach their revenue lid based on the skills of the people, including the leader themselves. And then the other problem is the alignment of everyone in the company. Because at that stage, like at Plant Guy, doing we're this year somewhere between 5 to 5.5 million. We have, I don't know, 30 something, maybe 40 team members there. And that becomes a lot more people than you're not sitting around a table eating one pizza together with that group. Like that's a squad, you know what I mean? And so as the business is maturing, you have to, over that million hump, you need to align and create a company, make sure there's a company vision. There needs to be a set company mission of where everyone in the company is going together. Where is this journey? What is our stake in the ground of where we're going? And then there has to be core value alignment that's consistently, shared within the organization. So we're making sure that the people we're hiring, the people that we're growing, and the people that are leading our people are in alignment with our mission, our vision, and our core values. And if all of those things are true, and then we go to that other, that first thing that I was talking about, which is making sure you have the right specialist in a role that can execute it at a high level, that is what is actually helps the business go to 5, 7, 10 million a year in revenue. But people don't want to have hard conversations in that 1 to 3 million a year range, and they let the poor performer in finance and they let the poor performer in ops or whatever role it is in the company stay there, because they don't want to have a conversation about them not doing the job well enough anymore at this revenue. So then they stay stuck, and then they never grow past that. And that's what a lot of companies do. Instead of having the hard conversations and bring either coaching them up to those skills, if they can learn them fast enough to grow with the company, or you have to coach them out and you have to bring in someone that has worked in that role at a similar revenue range, so they know what the path looks like to grow that specific department. And that is what becomes the biggest factor, because at $1 million to 3 million a year in revenue, you have product market fit. You're getting leads, people are buying your stuff. You've already figured that out. Now you need to do more of it, which then creates the complexities in the other areas. And you need professionals to actually be running departments. So you actually, as you're growing through the multiple millions and upwards of 10 million, you're going to have a sales manager, you're going to have a marketing manager, you're going to have, a staff accountant or maybe a controller doing your finance for the company. You're going to have maybe an HR associate or manager in the company. And those are just things that'll start to be added to the organization. And I know I'm rambling on a lot, but like those are the things I see every time, just talking to either business owners or consulting with them. And those are the bottlenecks all the time.
I'm smiling and laughing, bro, because we could just end the episode right here. This is like a master class in the first 20 minutes. So go give us a 5-star rating and review right now, because this has been fire. Okay, Cody, let's keep talking about this, because I know so many people that ask me like, hey, Jesse, what I'm actually really stuck in looking for is how do I attract top talent? I'm doing, multiple 7 figures, but how do I attract those A players? What would you say to that?
Well, my first question is, are you an A player, to that person asking the question, right? It's like you will only attract a lesser good version of yourself. Like you're not going to attract, it's like, there's a joke. This is actually from Dave Ramsey, which is actually funny, but he talks about, he's like, you're not going to attract thoroughbreds with donkeys. Like if you got a bunch of donkeys running around your team and then you bring a thoroughbred in, they're going to look at him and be like, I'm not working with these donkeys. Like, are you kidding me? This isn't the environment I want to be in. So one of the first things is like, we got to always look at ourselves and who we are, and like, what is the caliber of our leadership, and what are we doing to grow as a leader so that we can attract top talent. The second thing to that, the actual tactical answer to that is, okay, so one of the things, and I was coaching this lady that's actually in our Scale with Pros group yesterday. She has multiple med spas, and she was talking about this on, really struggling with retaining talent. And what I was telling her, and this is something I was helping our cleaning company fix too, is people focus so much on like customer acquisition, and they're like, I got this, look, check out my funnel system that brings in the leads, and then we sell them on this stage and we upsell them, and they're really proud and impressed. It's like, it's impressive, right? So people get excited about that. And then they're like, oh, there's no good people out there. There's, I can't find good talent. It's just hard. The employment market's tough out there. The same way that we build a funnel for bringing leads into our business to sell is the same thing that we must do to create a funnel for the talent that we want to recruit. And so with that, like, let's just take a high churn role, for example. So like the cleaners at that cleaning company, we're 90 days in, we're working on helping them fix this. So their average cleaner stayed for a little over 90 days. It was the average amount of time that a cleaner will stay. And so that means we'll churn a cleaner 4 times a year. So it's like, that's not good. So we need to figure out how to keep them longer. So we're doing all of these things internally to, increase their happiness while working at the business and all of that. But how do we fix the problem of we need more cleaners? Well, what we do is, one, we track the data just like we would in marketing campaigns. When we put an ad out for a high churn role, say like a cleaner, we put the ad out and we track how many applications we get a day and a week, how many of those applications turn into an actual interview, how many of those get, interviewed, get past the interview and that get passed on to training, how many of those that go into training, pass training, and are actually able to go and clean and start cleaning. And of those that start cleaning, what is the average amount of time from the day they start that then they churn and leave the biz and leave the company, so that we're able to keep an eye on those metrics. And if we know that people leave every 90 days, we want to work that up to 100 days and 110 days, 120. We want to just consistently try to push that out, so they stay longer. But we plan just like on the marketing side for leads. If you know that you need 10 leads for every sale, well, if you need 10 sales, you need 100 leads to get 10 sales, right? So it's just data and math that has to be done. And so you can create these hiring funnels. And I'll tell you this, everyone at all of my companies has been hired from Indeed or referrals from people that we have then hired. I have 0 people working for our companies that was a friend or a relationship that I had. Every single person is we have recruited cold. So we have figured this thing out. We know how to hire. We know how to hire well, and they perform well. And so the thing that people have to focus on is, again, building that funnel. It's like, what is the interview process look like? So I'll go through this, quick, because I want to be, good on time. But essentially, like in our hiring process, typically we'll have, let's say, a 3-step interview process. I'll give you an example of one that we just hired a new staff accountant. That was one of our most recent hires about 45 days ago. So this is the process. Indeed ad goes up after we created a very clear job description that clearly outlines their role and responsibilities. And then we create an internal job description that we share with a candidate like this when they start, which outlines what does your first 30, 60, 90 days look like? What does success look like in the role specifically? So there's no confusion of what winning looks like here for the role. And then once we actually go through the interview process, what we do is on that role, 3-step interview. Step 1, and for those that are like a one-man band, you don't need to do a 3-step. A 2-step's fine, but we have a team, an HR manager, and all that. So our HR manager, step 1, does a cultural interview. On our cultural interview, it's really, there's 10 questions, but it's typically 3 to 5 get asked. We'll go through those questions, and it's basically just kind of getting a vibe check. Are they going to fit in with our core values? We're going to ask core value related questions. And so that if they answer negatively to our core values, they're out already. We don't want to move them along. If one of our core values is, we are results oriented, and we ask a question that they, kind of don't answer in a way that we feel that they're going to be a culture fit in that regard, like we're not going to pass them through. So we're verifying core value fits in our first initial interview, and then also like, trying to just get a vibe check of like, okay, are they going to be okay working in the office? Are they fine? A lot of our team works in office here. So that is the first interview. If they pass from the first interview, then we move on to the work study or technical part of the interview. And all roles are different. Like, say, for example, we have video editors, and when a video editor is interviewing, they pass the first one. Their technical interview is, we say, here's a video of a bunch of jacked up stuff. Can you turn this into a YouTube video and to 2 short form pieces of content? That's their technical study. Submit it by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Let's see how fast they could turn this thing around and what the quality looks like. Because I don't care what their resume says, and I also don't care what their portfolio of work says, because it could be lies. Like, they could just steal other people's work and say it's theirs. So I want to see them do an actual piece of our content, and how fast can they turn it around, and what does it look like? That is how I'm going to test them. So that is the work study. Another example, the staff accountant that we hired, my CFO, when she came in, he actually had 3 candidates that he was really excited about. And so when they went through this work study, what he did is they literally came in and he had his computer. He's like literally like at his computer here. He has a test QuickBooks account up that had like jacked up. It was like jacked up, like things were miscategorized and weren't set up correctly. The chart of accounts were all off. And so she comes in, and then each candidate, he did this. He's like, ask them like 4 or 5 super technical questions and see how they respond. And he's like, okay, great. So one of the final things that we want to see you do is go through this QuickBooks, and I need you to fix it and correct the categorization so it's done correctly. And then I need you to explain your thought process to me on why you did it that way. And he literally just gave him the computer and said, go. And then he just left the room and, came back, and he actually had one of them that literally couldn't even figure out how to do it. And then, 2 of them passed that technical, but that was a way to vet. And the funny thing is, the one that couldn't do it had the highest title from another company. So it's like they should have been the more senior one. But titles don't matter. I don't care what some other ding dong company, titled someone that doesn't know what they're doing. I want to see what they could do here. And so that technical or work study is how we vet competency of their skill of the job they're going to be doing, which saves you lots of time and money from hiring people that are just, king or queen catfish people that make it seem like they know what they're doing, but they really don't. And then the final interview is number 3, which is we bring them in person. Depending on the role, it might be a panel interview of 2 or 3 people that'll be working with the role. Or it might just be, if it's the direct hiring manager, it's just with them, and they're just going to go through a few more technical things, a couple other cultural things, and just getting more of a vibe check in person and seeing how they could assimilate into our environment. So that's our generally what we do for our interview process.
Guys, this is gold right here. This is gonna be the most replayed episode we've ever done. This is so good.
But
Cody,
it
a
won't
question
be,
that
because people don't care about this, because it's not sexy and it's not marketing and sales.
okay, that is for most audiences, Cody, but my audience has been asking me, what is this process? I'm like, I don't know, I'm not there yet. Let me find someone. So, Cody, you are an answer to prayer right now.
Oh,
So there's a
good. I'm
question
glad.
that I wrote down that I'm curious. Do you have the same core values for across the board, or do you have different core values based on the company and industry?
So we have our same core values at any company that I fully am like the owner of, essentially, or, me and Pace on partners on a couple, it's the same core values. With the companies we've acquired, they typically will adopt some of our core values because they didn't have their own core values. And then, we just help support them, because again, like at Plant Guy, he added another value that wasn't one that we had. But he adopted, I think 3 of our values for their company. Same thing with the cleaning company. Like we coach them on how to create their core values, and then they're just like, we really like 3 of your guys's. Can we just take those? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, that's, there's good alignment there. And so yes, for me, if any company that I would be a sole owner of, or I'm the sole decision maker on the values, they're going to be exactly the same. 1, because I'm not going to be able to remember freaking 20 different values for different companies. And 2, values are values across the board. Like our values is, we think, we, not me. We are results oriented. We do the right thing, and we bring solutions before problems. Those are our 4 values. And everyone in our company is aligned on those are our values. And if you consistently do not fit in those values, you won't be here. Even if you could do the job, it doesn't matter. You have to be in those values to stay here long term.
So good. Go deeper into that last one. We provide solutions before problems.
Yeah, we bring solutions before problems. So essentially, that is our goal, is to encourage people to be critical thinkers, and not to, like, say, for example, it's like an individual contributor's working on a project and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. I'm just going to go bring my problem to my manager and say, here's my problem, manager. Can you solve my problem for me? So what we coach our team to do, and it's why it's one of our values, is don't bring a problem to someone in our company. Bring the problem with a one or two potential options that you've thought about. Even if they're wrong, we want the critical thinking to occur so that it keeps people thinking that way. So it's like, hey, like I'm really struggling with this, and I haven't figured out the exact way that this is supposed to be done. This is the way that I was thinking about doing it, but I'm just not sure. Could I get some feedback and some help? So I'm at least showing that I'm using my brain and I'm not just, bringing the problem to someone else to solve. It's because oftentimes when people sit there and critically think enough, they're going to solve it on their own. But if in the off chance they can't, yes, our team is there to support. It isn't, us having that as a value because we don't want to help each other. It's us having it as a value because we want to encourage critical thinking and we want to encourage people to be their own thought leaders themselves so that they can, get things done faster without having to wait for someone else to respond about an answer and to think for themselves. So
I'm blanking on a question. I heard it in another podcast recently. I'm like, that's so good. When someone comes up to you with a problem, it was something like, if you did know the answer, what do you think it would be? Like, do you have any of those phrases?
oh yeah, I got lots of those
Oh,
phrases.
give me some, Cody.
Sometimes it's like framing it in a way where it's like someone's like, oh well, like we're stuck, like how do we what do we need to do? It's like, so I was literally having this conversation with one of our partners at the cleaning company this morning, and so he was just like, I just feel like there's so many things that we need to do and I don't know what to do first. And so I asked him this. I was like, okay, let's imagine like if we wove a magic wand right now and we doubled the company, what would break? Like, what would be the first thing you think of that would just light on fire? And he's like, oh, he's like, dude, he's like, we would, our entire, process of how we're, doing our cleanings, our system would break there. I'm like, well, that's maybe the first thing that needs to be fixed first. And so it's like asking the better quality questions we ask, the better quality answers we're going to get. And so, that you could ask things like, that's one of them, is like, if you're stuck in your business and you're like, what do I need to do that's the most important? Well, if you were to double your business right now, what is the number one constraint that's preventing you from doubling your business, or what would break? Well, we don't have enough leads to do that. Okay, well, it sounds like marketing's your problem. You need to get more leads so you can do more business. Or, oh, well, all our customers keep canceling on the back end because our fulfillment is dog shit. So yeah, no, people don't stay with us. So, well, you need to go work on your fulfillment and make your clients happier so they stay longer and they give you more money. And so those are the things that, those are things you could ask. And then, with team members, if they bring stuff, obviously like that could be one of them, with the situation. And like, so if someone brings me something and I'm trying to coach them to improve on it, I'm like, okay, like what if uh what if you did know the answer, what would it be? And it sounds stupid, but it's like, if you did know the answer, what would it be? Or what if I was on my deathbed right now and you had to solve this problem, what would you do? Or if I'm on vacation for a week and you can't reach me for a week and you had this come up on your plate today, how would you solve it? What do you think is the best thing to do? And you could just point it back to them so that they could do it. And the goal of that isn't to be like, just arrogant or like, be a butthole. It's to get them to think different and to ask themselves those questions. And there's those questions that we could be asking ourselves, and like our performance. It's like, okay, if I look at this last week, how would I rate the week for this one particular business I'm working on, a 1 to 10? Well, okay, it's a 7. Well, why isn't it a 10? Like, what would have had to have been true for me to feel like last week was a 10 out of 10 for that business? Okay, well, XYZ. Well, okay, so what am I going to do this week to make sure that X, Y, and Z is done this week so that I can, at the end of this week, say that this week was a 10 out of 10 success for that business? Is there anything else that I'm missing? Right? Like, there's those questions that we ask will help us get better answers to our problems that we're trying to work through.
This is the most unsexy, sexiest podcast episode I've ever done, Cody. I'm loving this. If you're at 6 or 7 figures and you're listening to this, I guarantee something that Cody said in this episode is going to positively impact your business. Cody, I had a thought right now and kind of just went away from me. But, here we go. So someone like me, like last year, when I'm thinking I want to make, millions of dollars in my business, but I'm thinking so small-minded, I'm thinking I can't imagine having employees. I can't imagine, adding more people on my team. I could barely, manage myself. how do you help those people? What would you suggest those people do in order to think bigger and be able to realize that, hey, this is possible for you too?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. Like one of the things is like who do you surround yourself with? Like if you're around people that are working jobs and that's all they do and they don't think big, and and first I just want to also be clear, like I don't have any negative energy or have any, I never would talk down on anyone that chooses to work a job. I have amazing team members at our companies that I'm so grateful for, and they are freaking studs. But if you're trying to, let's say for example, it's like you're trying to make 100 grand a month in your business or 50 grand a month, and the five people you spend the most time with are negative and they're not business owners and they're not generating that type of income. Well, you need to get around people that are doing that, because for if when you're not around it, it's like you can get around people and it's like 50 grand for the month would be a terrible month, or 100 grand for the month would be like crap, the last month was terrible. So one is, the people that you surround yourself with will help you raise your lid of belief, because if you're around people that are doing it, it makes you believe it's possible. It's like Roger Bannister, he was the first person to ever run the 4 minute mile, a sub 4 minute mile. And so what happened after Roger Bannister ran the 4 minute mile, after no one did it and doctors and scientists said it was physically impossible and incapable for the human body to do that, there's literally been hundreds of thousands of people that have now ran a 4 minute mile after that, including high school kids have ran a sub 4 minute mile. And so why is that? Well, the belief was raised because someone else did it. And so if you can get around people that are doing it, instead of being around people that are negative and that aren't doing the things that you want, that is one of the proximity effect is going to allow you to see bigger and to think bigger. But then going to that next part of the question, which is, okay, well, if you're going to hire someone, don't hire just to hire. Again, going back to our earlier conversation, if you're going to hire and it's one of those first roles, you need to be hiring for your weaknesses. What are your strengths? And you need to hire someone to support your weaknesses, so that you can focus on continuing to grow and to push the things forward that are in your strengths. And so those are, a couple of the things that you have to keep in mind. And, there's a lot of tactical things. Like one of the things that I personally, believe in doing is, if I'm going to hire a new team member for, especially a fledgling growing company, I want at least 3 months of reserves of their salary and the operating account on top of whatever other, capitals in that operating account. I want to have those reserves, so I have some runway to get them onboarded, get them up to speed, and get them performing, so that I can recognize, that ROI as quickly as possible, but I have some runway to get them up to speed and get them into the business. So those are a couple of the things that I think about with that. Is like, one, you have to believe, because if you just don't believe it's not possible, yeah, you're not going to do it. And two is, there's some tactical sides of like, okay, well, hire someone that makes sense for you to hire. If you're an amazing salesperson, don't hire another salesperson as your first hire. You're already great at sales. Get someone else to help you do the other stuff, or vice versa. So that's my thoughts on that.
100%. Because when I was working in corporate America, like you said, no shame on working in corporate. That actually, was able to pay for my assets and my dream lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I definitely show a lot of love to my W-2 job. But once I actually started hanging out with people that were doing 7 figures, that were doing 8 figures, that's when I was able to realize and rub shoulders with them and join masterminds and communities. That's definitely when I started realizing and had that belief in myself that I could do it too. Which, by the way, Cody, I'm gonna need to send you one of these shirts, man. Would you
Oh,
rock
I
it?
love that. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'll wear it.
Come on now with the State 48 collab.
I love it. I love it. That's
So,
awesome.
what I want to ask you is, how did you elevate your circle? I know as we're wrapping up right now.
Yeah. I mean, I am intentional on doing that all the time. I mean, I've been investing in coaches, masterminds, mentorships for 10 years. And people will say negative things about that sometimes. They're like, oh, you're just giving them money, and it's like, what are you even really getting? And oh, you could just learn it on your own, you could just go on YouTube and learn the thing. Or like, I have two business coaches right now that are very expensive to, coach me. And, one is Jeff Mask, which he was on the executive team that grew Infusionsoft to 100 million a year. So he coaches me, and I've been coaching with him for 2 years. And then my other coach is Adam Coffey, which he exited a company for over $1 billion, CoolSys, one of the biggest HVAC companies in the nation. And so I have those two guys coaching me and in my corner helping me so I can continue to grow. And so from like a mentorship standpoint, like I believe everyone should have mentors. Obviously, everyone's going to be in a different financial position of what they can afford to pay for that. But I always was trying to get myself into rooms with people that were doing more so I could, one, raise my lid of what's possible and my belief of what's possible. But then two, to network with the other people in those rooms that are doing similar things that I'm doing. And so I could build new friendships and new relationships with them and have, I almost call them like battle buddies. Like these are other people that are on the same entrepreneurial crusade that I'm on, that we can, share war stories and like, go, hey, I'm doing this and this is working, or, hey, this isn't working. What are you doing in your business? And what have you seen work out well for that? And, getting yourself, and it's like, yeah, like a lot of those, like you got to pay to play, but I will pay all day long if it means like there's two M's you learn from. You either learn from your mentors or you learn from your own mistakes. And if and a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to figure it out, or I'll watch YouTube videos. It's like, okay, have fun. Like there's a reason that and I'm not a braggy person, but there's a reason I am where I am, because I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaches, mentorships, and masterminds, while other people are cheap asses and want to just, figure it out on their own and, be self-made on their own. It's like, I'm going to pay someone so I can get here in this amount of time, while someone else takes freaking, an extra 5 years because they had to learn the mistakes on their own, versus I'm just paying to cut. I want the fast pass at Disneyland, man. Like, I'm not trying to wait in line. I'm trying to get the answer that I need to just go and do the thing. Like, I don't want to go through the pain and suffering. There's already enough pain and suffering in entrepreneurship. I want to know, my blind spot around the corner so I don't get freaking, knocked out when I turn the corner. Like, I don't want to experience that.
Go ahead, Cody. Talk that talk, man. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to be average, then sure, maybe you don't need a coach or mentor. But if you're trying to excel, why do you think all the athletes have coaches, personal trainers? They have a whole team around them. The best people in the world, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, okay, they still had coaches and mentors. So you just nailed that on the head, which you also mentioned being intentional. And there's a cool quote that one of my good friends, and you might know him. Do you know Big Sexy?
Big Sexy.
Mr. Zachary Keeps.
Oh, yes, I do know him.
So Zach Keeps has a quote that he said when we were on a radio show. And essentially, I was kind of talking about how, I randomly got an investor to want to do a deal with me. He stopped the show. He's like, Jesse, nothing happens randomly when you live intentionally. And I was like, oh, that's a bar right there, Zach. So that's another, just a little quote that I love to live by. But as we wrap up, Cody, what I want to ask you is, before I ask you what's the best way people can reach out and talk to you, I want to say this. Growth House, we're very much a go-giving community, which means that we're going to reach out. People are going to want to connect with you, especially having this very unsexy, sexy podcast. People are going to hit you up. But they're not going to say, hey, can I pick your brain? And if they do, I don't know them. I don't know these people. So we want to provide you some kind of value, whether it's go rate and review your podcast, whether it's something small or something big. How can people serve you? And also, I remember you wrote in our little forum before the podcast that, what kind of connection can I make for you? And you just put like a connection or person. I'm like, Cody, that's not very specific.
Oh,
so
my assistant filled that out. I didn't even look at it. My assistant filled that out. So I'm sorry.
You're good. I just want to throw that in there. I'm like, Cody, I want to help you too, man. So what kind of resource, what kind of connection, and what kind of value can we bring you before reaching out?
I would think, obviously, if people connect with me on Instagram, I'm pretty active on there, Cody Barton Official. I'm getting more consistent business content out on my YouTube channel. I have my podcast, Scale with Pros, where we talk about, helping people grow to that multi-million-dollar a year building a high profit self-managing company, which is what I'm all about. And, those are the things that I'm trying to help people with. So really just, following those sources. And, if the, like all I do within our Scale with Pros group is helping businesses work through these challenges. And, so if that's a good fit for people, that's something they could check out. They could find more info on that on my Instagram. But, as far as connections go, would love to. Anyone else that you think I could be a good fit for their podcast to go on? I'm, enjoying doing podcasts. So, that would be something I would think is, people that are in, a similar type of audience, other business owners that are trying to scale, that are trying to go to that next level and trying to, identify what those gaps are that are holding them from where they are and where they want to go. I think maybe more podcasts. I'm happy to do these and just enjoy helping and seeing other people grow. It's super fun for me.
Man, it's been a blast. Selfishly, I learned a lot, and I've had like 2 pages of notes, and I'm going to re-listen to this. So thank you, Cody. With that being said, one time, just drop your Instagram. What's the best way to reach out? You said Instagram, and then also put everything in the show notes.
Yeah. I would just say, on Instagram, Cody Barton official on Instagram. So, and then, they'll find my YouTube and everything else from there. So
Cody Barton, ladies and gentlemen, Jesse Ray, your host, Growth House Podcast. I appreciate you, man, and we're out.